In South Africa, brutality by the police led to an attempt on the life of Prime Minister Verwoerd. It was a year of upheaval. The earth itself shook. Earthquakes in Morocco, Iran, and Chile took 16,000 lives. The series of Chilean quakes sent tidal waves thundering across the entire Pacific. Hurricane Donna spread destruction from the Caribbean to New England. An early blizzard crippled transportation in several eastern states. Snow was still on the ground when two airliners collided over New York. History's worst air disaster, it claimed 134 lives. 4 days later at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, the Navy's largest carrier caught fire while still under construction. 49 workmen perished. Disaster, this time diplomatic, befell the American U-2 spy plane shot down over Russia. Moscow paraded the evidence, and pilot Gary Powers, captured alive, was given a 10-year sentence. A belligerent Soviet Premier Khrushchev in Paris for summit talks with Western Big Three, Eisenhower, Macmillan, and de Gaulle, broke off the meeting before it began. In a tirade to newsmen, Khrushchev called the U-2 incident proof of U.S. bad faith. Japan's Premier Kishi signed a new U.S. defense treaty, but pandemonium broke loose in the Japanese Diet before it was ratified. Fired by the U-2 case, Japanese leftists violently protested the treaty. Tokyo riots forced President Eisenhower to cancel his scheduled visit. Premier Kishi was wounded by an assailant's knife after he'd resigned. Later, Socialist leader Asanuma was stabbed to death before a stunned audience. South Korean and Turkish governments collapsed in other riots, but calm returned to Japan, where new Premier Okeda vowed to uphold the U.S. treaty. In the Congo, chaos followed independence hastily granted by Belgium. A United Nations peace force was hampered by unilateral Soviet aid to hot-headed Premier Patrice Lumumba. The West backed President Joseph Kasavubu. Additional confusion when Moise Tshomba declared Katanga province a separate nation. A semblance of order was finally established by Colonel Joseph Mobutu. In New York, as 16 new African nations were seated, world leaders argued over the Congo. Varying neutralists, Egypt's Nasser, Yugoslavia's Tito, Nkrumah of Ghana, and India's Nehru, were upstaged by Nikita Khruschev, who played a balcony scene for newsmen and posed with Cuba's Castro for propaganda pictures. President Eisenhower appealed for support of the UN peace force and denounced unilateral action in the Congo. Canada's Prime Minister John Diefenbaker eloquently seconded his words, as did Britain's Macmillan, who was unceremoniously interrupted by Khrushchev. And when Secretary General Hammarskjöld refused Soviet demands to resign, Khrushchev's men pounded the table. Despite Khrushchev's antics, Lumumba was captured by Colonel Mobutu and offered a diet of his own words. In the race for space, the United States orbited several advanced satellites, while Russia sent up 2 dogs to speed Soviet hopes of putting the first man in space. The nuclear-powered USS George Washington began sea duty, the first submarine to fire a Polaris missile while concealed in the depths. American defense insurance in a shaken world. In 1960, everyone's favorite princess was married. The crowds cheered for England's Margaret Rose and her husband, photographer Anthony Armstrong Jones. Margaret's sister, Queen Elizabeth, had a new baby. Prince Andrew was her 3rd child and 2nd son. And there was little Prince Hiro, 1st child for Princess Michiko and Japan's Crown Prince Akihito. In Iran, the Shah's 3rd wife, Queen Faradiba, gave birth to the long-awaited male heir to the throne. And in Washington, a White House childhood was in store for John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Jr. 1960 was presidential year. In large measure, the nation's and the world's future was in the hands of America's voters on November 8th. When the parties convened, the Democrats chose Senator John F. Kennedy. He urged greater national effort to meet challenges at home and abroad. The Republican candidate, Vice President Richard M. Nixon, stressed his experience in government. By a narrow margin, the decision went to the youngest man ever elected to the highest office in the land, John Kennedy of Massachusetts.
The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead to move this country safely through the 1960s.
In 1960, the United States once again had shown to a troubled world an example of peaceful and orderly change from one administration to the next.